Okay, here we are. Now, our guy here, this is, I don't know what this is exactly. It's obviously a very old photo. They've probably had hold of it with Photoshop a little bit too. I don't really know. But here's the thing, I really like this look. You know, first of all, the look of the old-fashioned photo, and secondly, I'm kind of in love with this color too. So we're going to try to recreate this, and I've come up with something that's, well, it's not quite it, but I'm still going to err on the side of being just a little bit brighter. Yeah, I am. Oh dear. Okay, this is really light. Oh, well, I didn't have that figured out as well as I thought I did. Okay, here's what I have. I have a mixture, and I'm fixing to change it. I have a mixture here. It's half Quin Gold to, or I should say 1 part Quin Gold to 1 part raw sienna, or approximately. And then it's got some ivory black added to it. And you can see the color there is, well, you can see that it's got black in it. And here it is really light, and the problem is it's still a little too yellow, particularly when I look at the color on his forehead, for instance. It's really, really pale, but it's just not that yellow. So what I think I need to do, you just follow along with me as we test. What I think I need is, I think I need more black. Oh, that's going to feel like a lot. I think I need more. This is ivory black, by the way. If you're using lamp black, you could use that too. It's a little harder to work with. I'm going to thin this out some more. Okay, let's see what happens here. Okay. I think that's closer to it. And see, you can see the black in that. And on his forehead, that's pretty light. And so, this might even be a little too strong. I might want to add a little more water to it. And lose just a little bit more of that color for my first layer. I mean, that's going to be it. That's going to suit me. So you can see this looks, okay, whatever. Now you really can't do this with blue and get the effect. You'll get some greenish to it if you do. And this really has no green tint to it at all. So you pretty much need to work with black. So we have one thing in the whole picture that is supposed to be white. Actually, if you look at the dots in it, there's still a little bit of color here, but that's this part of the necktie. And what I'm going to do, or his collar, it's not the tie, it's the collar. I'm going to put a real light little X on there with my pencil that I know I can pull that up, because I'm going to paint everything else but that with a real pale mixture of this stuff. So I just have to remember to leave those 2 spots alone, because I would like a pure white somewhere in this painting. And this seems to be my only excuse, unless I leave a few, open twinkles. The problem with twinkles is that they're just not in keeping with this photograph. So it's just a matter of choice whether you want to leave twinkles. I think I'm not going to. And those of you that are watching me on this, your old hands, you know what I mean by twinkles. So real fluid, real wet. I still wouldn't mind a few drips or streaks in this, though, quite frankly. Even though it's following after an old photograph. Well, I don't think I'm going to be able to get a few drips on here yet, but unless I contrive them. Let's see. It's probably not going to do anything. It's too wet. All right, so that's step one. Well, that was boring and easy, except for the mixing. And you might have to, I played with it quite a bit. You can see how yellow these first ones were in relationship to what I've put down here now. So that's quite a bit of black in that mix. But it's real thin. In fact, we're going to have to thicken it. Maybe not. All right. First thing is to get this dry. Okay, so you can see how different in color this is from my first stab at it. And then I kept adding black and kept adding black, and it never was enough until I added even more black. Wow. Okay, so now we have some areas on this that are just super lighter than any other areas. Of course, we have that. See, that stands out nicely now, doesn't it? Even though we've got a thin, pale wash on here, the white really pops. And this would be a good time, if you've got your paper really dry, this would be a good time to erase those X's, because if they ever get wet, they're liable to kind of set in there. Okay, so now let's look at where our very lightest areas are on his skin. I'd say right in here, even there's a little darker area because his skull kind of dips in right here and then is more prominent up here. He's got a forehead like my mother's. And then this area right here is lighter, well, maybe right there. And I guess the ear is about the same as that. So if you want, you could even put a line here. Maybe I'll do this and up there. I'm trying to make it real light. You know, sometimes you can use a watercolor pencil on this. I've had varying degrees of success with that, though. Right here. Maybe it moves over a little bit. Yeah, something like this. And then it comes down and there's just a little area right there. And there's a little area right here. And if you wanted to, you could count this area right here. See right here? You could count that. It's probably a little darker, but you know. All right, so I'm going to paint every area again with this same mixture, except for those areas and of course these two right here. And this has been sitting for about 40 minutes. So I'm going to add a little water to it. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, we'll go with that. So let's paint this area in again. Going to paint everything. And I'm painting on dry paper both times. I started out on dry paper. I think I forgot to mention that. I think we're best off painting on dry paper when we can and painting real wet. Sometimes when people are painting on pre-wet paper, they just tend to get a little too careful, and everything has so many soft edges, and then it gets, I don't know, an overworked kind of mushy look. So this is really wet, and because I drew those little lines, I think that's real helpful, quite frankly. Whoop, I almost covered that one up. And I got up here, which I didn't intend to. Okay. Well, that's not enough to hurt. So we're going to paint here. And I had decided to go with this little dippy place on the skull. You know, it also depends on how you perceive him. You don't have to paint him just the way I do. But as long as you paint, really keep it nice and juicy. Oop. As long as you keep it nice and juicy, it will spread nicely. I didn't get that shape there quite right. I got sloppy and ran over it. Boy, that really stands out here now. Of course, this is wet. So when it dries, it's not going to look quite as strong as it does now. And then we're going to start to change up the mixture. Okay, so I'm going to let that sit. I wonder if I could pull up a little of that. You know what? I got a little bit of a run back here, and I like it. I really wanted a little bit of runniness to this. Is the only thing that I personally wanted to do to make it a little bit not like the photograph. I bet I don't have that photograph in here where you can see it, do I? Oh dear, I'm sorry. There. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm waiting for the sheen's starting to go here. So I'm just going to add a few dabs of water here. I mean, a lot of water. And maybe some of them will make, oh yeah, see, runbacks. They won't be real strong runbacks. They'll be pretty mild because this is pretty pale color. I could put one in his beard. It probably won't show up later. We'll do that. Okay, now I'm going to go off and leave it. Okay, so I went off and left this. Boy, I got some water spots. You know, I think what appealed to me about this, and I've got them up in the face even, but what appealed to me about this, I think, was that's sort of like, again, like an aged photo a little bit. So we have this situation now where apparently the black means a lot. And so as we move into some of these areas, we begin to get more red in here. There's just a teeniest bit more red there. But with red, I think, is going to have to come black, because the red would just be too bright. Now I have Quin Burnt Scarlet. And a better choice, I'm going to go ahead and use this, but a better choice might have been Permanent Brown, because it's a little duller. Let's put some black into that. Let's put a lot of black into that. Oh my. You know what? I need another place to mix this, I think. Here's what I'll do. I'll make a little dam through here. A little dry spot. Let's go ahead and look at this glazed. I know this is going to be too heavy. Let's look at this glazed. Oh, well, that's not too bad. Now, if it had a little bit more gold in it, I was going to mix this with that, but I think I might could just mix a little bit more quinacridone gold into this. That wasn't much more. Let's see what that does. Oh, I think that really works, like here. So let's play with it on this background first a little bit, so that rather than the face, let's see what it does on the background first. So we've got this background here that you notice it almost looks like it's some kind of bleed from the coat back up into the background. See, it almost vignettes up and from his hair and everywhere. So I'm going to just pull a little of this. This is going to be so dark that I'm going to just stop it right here. But I'm going to pull a little bit of this up here. I think I want a little more. I don't know. And then I'm going to... actually, we need a little bit all the way up about yay far. Something like that. This is a little stronger. It's a little different, but I like it. It's not bad. So let's do it over here too. So I can't emphasize how much you need black to do this. I want a soft edge there. Oh, okay. I was semi, happy with the idea of this project when we started it, but I wasn't real excited about it. But now I'm really getting with it here. So the only problem I have here is that I haven't mixed enough of this up. So let's take some more. Let's just put this all together now. Let's put some more black into it. And the thing here is more black than what I normally would think was a good thing. A lot more black than what I would normally think is a good thing. I don't want this to get you to thinking that you could just add, oh, I picked up raw sienna. I wanted Quin Gold. I don't want you to get the idea, ooh, so that's pretty colorful. That needs more black. That black is always a good idea to add to things. It isn't. It can be quite dulling. It can make a watercolor just go dead looking. But in this particular case, I think it's just delightful. It's also what else it's in there with. So we're working really dull, quiet color here anyway. This photo is really about value, and so the black works here. But if you just use plain black, black and white, it would be kind of ugly anyway. I just don't like watercolors that are black and white. I knew someone that was painting black and white little scenes, and I kind of insulted him because it wasn't somebody in my class. But I went up to him one day and told him if you just put a little color in them, they'd be a lot better. And I think he was insulted, but I think I was right. So let's take some round brushes here. This is a number 10. And this is still wet, so I have to be careful where I work. But I'm going to start Okay, I've got my mix here. I don't think it quite matches what I did. I think it may have a little less red in it, a little more gold. I don't know, but it'll work. So I'm going to start building in some darker areas. And the thing is that I really need to soften that. So I'm working on dry paper here, and I'm just going to break up edges. I'm going to soften this edge too, just barely, just a tiny bit of water there so that I just barely soften it. I guess I'll soften this too. But see, what's happened is as I'm working, it's started to dry and soak in just a little bit. So I was able to move that color just a little bit. Does it show? Yeah. I was able to move that color just a little bit pretty easily because it was beginning to set up. And I'll go ahead and put some color in here too. Oops. So this is wet color. I could leave a little highlight thing there in the eye. I'm probably going to do lifting on it later. Now that I've got the dark part there in the eye, this doesn't look all that dark right here anymore at all. And of course, we're going to add a lot more darks into it. So this is really just your mid-tone. Okay, like right here, that's wet, but we're going to see I'm wicking a lot of the water off the brush. And I'm immediately softening some of the edges, like here at the end, and then maybe I'll soften along here. And then maybe I'll wait a few seconds, and I'll see, maybe I want to pull up a little more color there. Or I might soften that edge just a tiny bit. Something like, oh, I don't like this. So I'm going to add water right here. And then I'm going to squeeze the brush out, and I'm going to pull some of that color back up. Yeah. Okay, we'll live with that. So right along here in the cheek area, this is an area that is, whoa, let's see that. Okay, this is an area, that's just got a bare bit of color to it. So what are we going to do there? Let's take this mixture again, and let's put a little bit of this mixture into it. There. And see, this is real soupy paint. This is way soupier than that. This is way thinner, but now I've added a tiny bit of the red-black mixture to it. So he has an area, is this showing? Yeah. He has an area right here. And right here. Maybe it does something like that. I think that you might want to leave that lighter. And what I'm going to do again, I'm just going to soften edges here. I'm not real concerned about back runs and funky things here because I think it's partly because this is such a this is a painting that could use some water spots and some interest that way because we're just working darks and lights. Oh, well, let's go ahead and take some of this. Now, I think I'm going to use darker color in a minute, but let's take some of this and let's, oh, that's still wet. It's not going to work. I wanted to add some darks in around here, but it's just too soon, and this is too pale to even count. He does have a little bit more color right here. Okay. Well, while we're here, let's just start working on his ear too. So now I'm picking up some of my darker mixture. There's a fold in his ear plus a cast shadow from it. And then, oops. Sometimes I have to adjust my glasses because I realize I'm not seeing everything I thought I was seeing. Okay, so I've got those two little shapes, but I've got to soften some edges. I've got to soften this edge quite a bit. And then I just want to soften the bottom of this. Oh, and then let's put a little, because this is dry enough down here. I can put a little shadow. It's a pale shadow, you know, it's a weak shadow. And we will soften the edge on that. Because he's got a thick earlobe, so it's kind of rounded there. Well, what I did was I pushed too much of the paint away and got that hard edge down here. So I'm going to have to come back and work on that in a little bit. Well, while we're over here, let's just go ahead and play with the hair. And so what I want to do is I want to make the hair by doing like little strokes, go in the direction that I think his hair is growing. But I'm not going to leave those as little strokes. Hopefully some remnants of my stroke motion will be left in here when I'm through. But I don't want too much of it because you really don't see it there either, do you? So I'm just going to break it up with a little bit of water in some places. See, so that it's not overly done. It doesn't look like just a bunch of hash marks or something. Oh, that's up there. Okay, well, I'll put something in here. So only do a little bit at a time. This really frames the top of his ear here. I only do a little bit at a time because I want to come back while it's still moist. Okay. Yeah, I kind of like that. I think I'm going to run out of this color. I'll have to mix more of it. Hope I can get it to match. So when you get the right thing mixed, you might mix up quite a bit of it at once. So you can see almost what's left here is the spaces between the strokes. The strokes are thicker, but you have little light highlights that are left in between. That's kind of cool. Okay, so let's break that up. I think I'll leave those little hard edges right there. I really like those. You know, if you see something you like, you leave it. If you don't, you do something else to it. Don't worry about if it's necessarily what's exactly in the picture. It's more a matter of is it going to entertain your view, or does it entertain you when you're looking at it? So I've got some nice long lines there, so and they're a little darker than what's over here, which I'm okay with that, but I want to break them up a little bit more. In fact, I'll squeeze that out and pull up a little bit. There. While we're over here, let's see if this isn't dry enough that I could redo that ear. I might even take a smaller brush. See, notice I did all that with a number 10. But it's also what you're comfortable with. But I would say that you need to use the largest brush that you can use for the job. You'll get a looser, better look if you can. I think I've got too much shadow going up over right there that doesn't really work with the photo rendering. I may actually lift that spot right there later. Okay, let's see how we're looking time-wise. Oh, I've got more splatters on his forehead. Duh. Too bad. Well, I messed up and took photos instead of video of what I did right in here. Okay. I'll do some more of it, but you can see that these are just a solid flat color in here. I didn't soften any edges or anything. What I like about this is that we've got just some beautiful design shapes in here. So let's do a little more. I don't know if the nose got in here or not. Let's add some shadow right here. You can see that I have done this once and it got washed out. I would rather you did this part of the nose too light than too dark. Okay, right there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to soften that edge right here. Just barely. Just this edge coming out on this side of the nostril, not the inside and not the bottom part, which is a cast shadow there. Okay. Well, let's come over here and do a little more of the same thing. This area, you know what? This is just in the way. This area is lighter. Does it show? Yeah. This area right in here is lighter, but I'm still going to put a pretty strong beard shadow here. And remember, it's what you leave. It's those little white areas that are interesting. And what you do want to do is vary those shapes and not make them all the same. I really got a nice variation here. I don't seem to be doing quite so well now. See, this is your chance to add some really pretty design in here. I think this is the part that didn't get recorded. I said that this is sort of like having polka dots on a woman's blouse. You've got this beautiful little bit of design in here. And these little dark spots within the beard, they're kind of tear-shaped. Those are really... Those make some nice design too. Just make sure that you make them interesting, that you don't start doing just a predictable polka dot pattern. In fact, I'm going to soften one edge on all those. Now here I have several that I traced that are in a variety of positions. Those got kind of all together. So let's do maybe one or two more here that I'm going to soften the edges on. These are interesting enough. I'll leave them stronger. I never appreciated men with beards until I started painting them and realized the advantage. And then this area right here comes into a dark, whoops, dark soft shadow right there. So this won't even be dark enough later. I'll have to add something to some of this. But that's got a nice thing going on. So we're going to need some soft areas in here, and we're going to have to come in and do some darker things to this too. So here's what I'm doing here. I'm laying just a little bit of color. But see, I don't want that to be the beard, but you notice I'm laying it kind of in strokes like the way the beard would go. And then I'm going to come in and soften a lot of edges. But what's going to happen is I should have a few lighter openings left in here. In other words, it's not the dark shapes that I'm putting in here. It's the little light shapes that I'm leaving. And we'll do a little, this is dry, so we'll come in here, we'll do a little bit of the same right here. We're just going to put a few marks in here. Oh, there's one that could stay right there. And then we're going to come in and soften and work in between them, but just play around and leave some light areas. This is fun. Never appreciated beards till now. All right. So see, that's kind of a nice thing going on there. Now, this is not how we're going to leave it. That's a little strong. We're actually going to make this darker, and we're going to put more shading in here. But this is not the final thing. This is probably maybe we're just going to go one step darker, maybe a few little spots that's another step, but most of this is just going to be, we're going to add another step to it, a simpler, probably easier step. This is dry here, so I am going to put a little shading right here. Much as I hate to minimize some of these little straggly things here. Again, leave some spaces that are not covered. Don't cover everything. So remember, here's what you're not doing. You're not putting in a beard because you're making marks that make the beard. Okay? What you're doing is you're putting in shading. I'm doing this darker so it shows up. You're putting in lines for the beard, and then you're coming in and softening, and what you're doing is you're trying to leave some of the spaces between some of your lines are going to stay. So that it's interesting. Does that show up? Yeah. So that it's interesting, but it's not about a bunch of things like this. This is amateurish. This makes a painting. Or when you do leave shapes, you leave really interesting shapes, but not those little, you know, he's got so many hairs on his chin that I'll just make a bunch of hairs there. No. Never. Okay. I'll go ahead and start this side of the nose, and then I'm going to stop. So, well, here you can't really even see the nostril to speak of. I did get it drawn in, so I think I will start with that. And then I think there's an extra dark area over here, so I'll go ahead and get an extra layer down here because I'm waiting for that other one to dry. But right here, this nose to mouth line, and there's a shadow here with it. It's doing something like that. Okay? And we might soften this edge just a little bit. That's fairly severe there when we get some other darks in. But maybe I'll soften this edge just a little bit. So generally, when I do something like that, what I do is, if I've got a shape, maybe I've got a long shape like this, what the first thing I'll do is I won't soften the sides of it. I'll nearly always break up the line at the top and the bottom. Depends on the situation. But generally I'll break that up first, and then if I need to break up some other areas, I will. But generally I will break up the top and bottom of the long area first. Okay, so we've got that. So that's a start on the nostril side over here. And maybe we'll just show there is a little extra dark place right in under here. It's a shadow under his nose. In fact, if you get to looking at this, there's a pretty strong shadow in here. So all I've done is I've sort of made a preliminary to the shadow. Now, in other words, this will get another layer on top of it. Oh, okay. That's it for today. Feel free to travel on with this. Basically, we'll be working the same technique. But then when we come back for the next layer, wait on me.